All right, hello everybody. Josh Smith here. I'm here at my studio, Flat Five. We're live from Flat Five, as we'll say. And my special guest today is one of my favorite guitar players in the whole world, Erick Walls. Dude, I've been a huge fan. I saw you for the first time 20 years ago, maybe, on a YouTube clip, and it just blew my mind, man. And I've been following you ever since. We never get to hang out, even though we live in the same city, which bums me out. We got to rectify that.
Yeah, absolutely, man. We gotta do something different moving forward, right?
Exactly, man. So, man, you've had an unreal career, um, and I want to talk a little bit about where you come from and all that. But I just want to give the listeners who maybe don't know you a background. I mean, hell, you played on Michael Jackson record. You play with Ledisi, with Anthony Hamilton, with Jay Z. You play with Charlie Wilson, which is good enough for me forever on Charlie Wilson. Anything plays on anything involved with the Gap Band is good with me. Uh,
But not.
Angie Stone, your resume is long. So, man, tell me a little bit about how you got to LA and how it all got started for you.
Well, man, from as early as I can remember, LA was a dream of mine. I'm from North Carolina. I grew up in a place called Durham, like the Raleigh Durham area. And I come from a musical family. My father was a gospel singer, recording artist and stuff. But I would always he had an unbelievable record collection. I would always read the credits and stuff. But what I was finding, especially with a lot of the gospel stuff, like everything I really gravitated towards was being recorded in LA. So, I would see these the names of these studios, Record Plant, Sunset Sound, all these, iconic studios. I'm like, you know what? There's something going on out in LA. And you would see it on TV, but I'm like, some kind of way I got to get out there. So fast forward, this is early on. So fast forward maybe 15 years later, once I really, after I really started playing, first opportunity that presented itself, I jumped at it. I came out here with a group of guys from back home. We had a record label, Soul Life Records, that had a label deal with Atlantic Records, and Anthony Hamilton was on the label. The first artist that came out was an artist by the name of Sunshine Anderson. She had like an R&B hit. So, that was like my introduction to the music business. And, from there, the music business is a lot smaller than one might, actually think. So everybody's connected in one way or another. But from there, just, it blossomed, and I was able to meet and work with some of my idols moving forward, so it's been a pretty amazing journey. And to be honest with you, 20 years later, I feel like I'm just getting started, Josh.
Dude, I know the feeling, man. I've been here 18 years, and it was always a dream to kind of come out here. I wanted to do my own thing always. But,
Hmm.
when it came time to like be a grown up man and pay bills and all that stuff, have a family, the only skill I had was playing guitar. So it was like, I'm moving to LA. I'm going to be a guitar player. And, you know, knock on wood, I guess it sometimes works out that we pay our bills and
I not to be deep, man, but when God blesses you with a gift and you actually take a leap of faith and really put yourself out there. I've never seen him make a fool out of anybody that really possesses a true gift. So
that's a good point right there. The leap of faith. How much do you think that is not responsible, but a huge part of any success that we have in this business? I think that having that backup plan and not being 100% all in is a big negative. You've got to make that complete leap.
I mean, it's all in or nothing as far as I'm concerned. I mean, God gave me a revelation a long time ago. He said, you know what, it's cool to be, where you're from is great, but if you have aspirations outside of this place, there's 8 billion people in this world, and if this environment is not going to give you the platform that you need to really go and be the best that you possibly can be, you need to go elsewhere. And I heard it loud and clear, and that's exactly what I did. So, it was a leap of faith in that I didn't know what to expect, but it was comforting knowing that he told me to do it. So, you know what I mean?
Right. Well, I think so. You're a pretty schooled musician. You went to Berkeley, right?
I did go to Berkeley. I spent some time there. Yeah.
And but also you got a church background. So how I think to me those are the musicians that I always gravitate towards are guys who grow up playing from a young age, who have this thing inside them that forced them to play. They had to do it, but then they also dedicated themselves to the craft and put in the work to learn the things you need to learn to be a professional, to be the best musician you can. When you mix that with the heart and the soul, I think is when you get the guys that are really special, and that's what I hear in your playing, man. But how much do you think that's a part of your personal, puzzle? Is the balance of the heart and soul and the education?
Well, growing up playing in church and just, really cutting my teeth with, in the real world, as they would say. And that's exactly what that is because, unfortunately or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, playing in church, like if you're not cutting it, the people aren't moving, the people are not moving. So you learn really quick what not to do. So, that in itself is the best schooling I think one could ever have in terms of just really understanding, being sensitive and understanding sensibilities and, really, really figuring out what works and what doesn't. But, that coupled with with the educational aspect of music, it's a once you like you said, I mean, it's definitely helped me. What I find is when I'm around or when I'm in situations with musicians who have only the schooling background, it becomes a bit stiff. And I'm generally, if I'm the only one that has this type of background, coming from church and just, it's a little something special. It's a sauce, and it's kind of comical to me because it's not something that can necessarily be described or put into words. So when I I did a gig or a series of gigs this over the last holiday season with Indina Menzel. We played at like Carnegie Hall, a bunch of stuff, and I met her like maybe a couple of months prior to that, and we were doing like a TV taping or whatever, and it was a great band, but it was very strict to the paper, and all the guys, they were great players, but I was kind of
Novak, right?
yeah, Gary Novak was playing, a lot of great, but I probably was the only one in the band that had, the church background or whatever. So
Sure.
she came to me. She was like, it's something different about what you're doing, and I knew what she was saying, but it was like, yeah. So that's not an uncommon thing. So I definitely I'm very grateful to have grown up that way and to really have to really have learned from that place and been able to apply that to other genres and moving forward, being able to just put something else in the pop landscape, if you would, of the other stuff that I going on to do. So no, it's been great,
Yeah.
man. Yeah.
I think that's a really great thing about your playing is you are always you at all times, but you can cover anything, and it's something I strive to do. Coming from even a very different background from you, but there's a lot of similarities. I came up playing blues since I was 10 years old, in
Because,
clubs with adults,
hey
and I was
cousin.
playing, till 4 in the morning, and people don't come up that way anymore. Guys
Yeah.
learn everything on YouTube and they go to school. And the question, I've taught some lessons during this pandemic, which is something I don't do that often. And the question the younger guitar players keep asking me is, where do I get, all the long lines and the stamina and then all this vocabulary? And it's like, because I played thousands of gigs of improvising, and I think that step's getting missed, like because there's just no gigs anymore like that.
Well, yeah, that's definitely true, and I think as great as the technology it is, it kind of takes that aspect out of it. It's like it's the as they say, the blood, the sweat, and the tear.
Yep. And
Yeah, I
then
mean,
keeping that at the center, it's like I'm obsessed with no matter how much new stuff I learn, if it's sophisticated harmonically or technique or whatever, that it doesn't erode what's at the core of me. I don't want to sound like, whatever. I'm not besmirching anybody, but I don't want to sound like, a robot. I want to
mhm.
sound like me at all times. I just want to bring this new stuff back and add it to my pie.
Absolutely, man. I get it. I
Yeah.
get it. And I think the seasoned, the understanding, the wise person definitely approaches it that way. So
Yep. Dude, so tell me personally, I've just always fascinated by your right hand. So tell me how you ended up playing the way you do and picking the way you do.
Man, it's kind of a ridiculous story, man. So growing up, it really is. So growing up where I'm from, like the Raleigh Durham area, we actually have not a really big, but there's some bluegrass. It's kind of a bluegrass scene there, and there's this bluegrass festival that happens once every year. And I started out on. I had like a small little harmony acoustic guitar. That was my first guitar. It just, I would try to pick out melodies and just. But what I was finding as I would progress, with the flat pick, I would always drop it into the sound hole of the guitar. Like, oh no, not this again. So I would have to, turn it over and shake it to get the pick out. So fast forward, my father took me to this bluegrass festival one year, and I saw all these guys picking with thumb picks. It was like a light went off. I'm like, oh, maybe if I got me one of those, I would never drop the pick again. And I mean, it's really as simple as that. I
It
don't.
wasn't a hero. It wasn't a suggestion. It was as simple as you didn't want to drop your pick.
I didn't want to drop the pick, and I saw some guys that weren't dropping the pick. So I just I picked it up, and I don't necessarily use the correct thumb picking technique, but I make it work make it work for me, man. So yes, it's really as simple as that, Josh.
Before you used the thumb pick, did you
Uh-huh.
use your other fingers much at all, or were you all flat pick?
It was all flat pick. It was all me just trying to get there the best way I knew how to. So yeah.
But it probably, without you even wanting to, forced you down the hybrid picking route.
Absolutely. And I mean, it really started blossoming into something, really beautiful because, a lot of the things I was listening to, especially rhythmic wise, it would allow me to do that, but then I could, in using my fingers, it would be more dynamic, you know what I mean? So, I would get the downstrokes. If I was using it in the manner that I would a flat pick, I could do that type of thing. But then with the single line stuff, I was able to, incorporate my fingers, and it just, did get the the different flavors in there, and it was like, oh, I think I might be onto something here. So
Dude, hybrid picking changed my life. I used to anchor my fingers on the pick guard,
uh-huh.
and the second I freed myself up, and it all came from wanting to learn the. I couldn't play that stuff. It just don't sound right if you flat pick that stuff, and
Absolutely.
but the second I switched, it changed the way I played everything, and it was the beginning of when I felt I started to find my voice, which was
Oh,
the mix of blues, history, and love with
yeah.
jazz harmony, and then this technique, and that was when I kind of felt like I started to find my world.
Wow. Wow. Wow, that's amazing, man. What a journey, right?
Yeah, dude, it's all that's what's so fascinating talking to all my friends and players. I love to hear how everybody arrived at where they are because for me, it was a very singular goal from about 16, a light switch flipped, and my singular goal became find my voice, find my voice. What's me? What's me? And then everything, once I kind of found it, how do I go further that way and make that the best thing about me? And I'm always curious how guys arrive at their own spot like that.
Yeah, I get it, man. Yeah, I really, I really admire, there's a lot to be said about, it's a million guitar players. I always say it's not called the Guitar Center for no reason. So, it's a wildly popular instrument. But, for people who have an identity, like it's as simple as an inch of an instrument that it is. It's like to have your own identity is like it's the most amazing thing to me. So I definitely have always gravitated towards, those really quirky kind of guitar players, or ones that's just had their own thing. It's always been astonishing to me, man. So and definitely you included, man. It's like it's you when you hear it. You're like, oh wow, yeah, that's Joshua. That's So yeah, man,
Thanks,
absolutely.
man. Well, yeah, that's important. You want people to know it's you.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. All right. Before we get into the 10 questions, I just want to, for the people who aren't familiar with you and maybe aren't familiar with quartet in general, if you could just tell them why it's so special. And I'll just give you my story. So coming up, listening to blues, listening to Ray Charles, the soul and R&B, and then I think I was 12 and I heard Sam Cooke for the first time. And I
Mhm.
was listening through the pop Sam Cooke, and then someone gave me a tape with Soul Stirrers on
Oh,
it,
yeah.
and he sings "Jesus Gave Me Water," and
Mhm.
so I'm a white Jewish dude from Florida, and that song made me want to give Jesus water, and then when I heard "Touch the Hem of His Garment," I just lost my mind, and I just want to know, someone who really is in that world and lives it. Tell everybody what they should hear and why it's so special.
Well, I think it's one of those it's one of the classic American music forms. It's really rich in history, and you really the primitive quartet music, the guitar, it was guitar and vocals. So, the
The
guitars
best,
roll.
man.
Oh man, it's amazing. So, you a lot of the early stuff, the group, the Dixie Hummingbirds, Howard Carroll is the guitar player. Now he's very much he had oh man, it's amazing. And he's influenced somewhat in a Western swing kind of way, but it's its own thing. It's the quartet harmony and rhythm with that backdrop. So it's amazing. So, getting into that stuff, and I mean, I pretty much, my father was in that world. So, I was able or fortunate enough to see a lot of a lot of those older groups, or those historical groups while they were still living and stuff. So it's just a great musical form. And the thing that it taught me the most was just discipline, discipline, and especially in rhythm playing, because once again, a lot of the earliest stuff, it was just guitar. So the guitar's foundational present has to be established. Otherwise, you're not doing the art form any justice. So I would learn. I would pick out. A lot of the early stuff. It's a lot of triad based touch stuff, but it's and then as it progressed, the music evolved a bit and it got a little bit more intricate, but it still never moved too far away from those type of figures. So no, it's such an amazing, I like it never, as simple as it is, it never gets old to me. Like I can always go back to, some of those classic recordings and just be inspired, man, so.
It's same with blues for me. I can listen to Albert King every day of my life. I can listen to Muddy Waters, Robert Johnson. People ask, "Oh, where do you get it? Where do you get a pocket like that?" Man, listen, that's you unaccompanied, playing by yourself, like you said, like they were doing back in the day. That's if you can't make it feel good like that, you can't make it feel good with a band.
Right.
You're
It's funny. I kind of, I kind of dumb it down and say, well, the job is just not to mess it up.
yeah.
That's really all they're asking you to do. Just don't mess it up. So,
All
yeah,
right,
man.
so everybody, if you have not listened to any of that music Eric was just talking about, do yourself a favor and dive in. All right, let's get to the 10 questions. So I've got this list of 10 questions that I've been asking all my friends, and they're mostly just selfishly the things I'm interested in knowing about all my friends, because I think about this nerdy stuff. So,
Mhm.
anyways, here we go. The top 10 questions here live at Flat Five. All right, man. When you started learning and playing, what was the first thing that just wound you up? The first lick you learned, the first song, the first anything that when you learned it, it was like that set the hook and there's no turning back now. You're a guitar player for the rest of your life.
Um, well, it's kind of hard to say. There's one recording that comes to mind, and it's by coincidentally it's a quartet group. It's a group called Slim and the Supreme Angels. Uh, the guy who actually really helped me very early on, and just kind of showing me a lot of fundamental stuff. Kevin Wilson, he was playing on this. Yeah, he does the International Musicians Summit.
Yep. Great player and mutual friend of ours. Yeah.
Yeah, he's a wonderful guy, but he it's funny when I got with him, I told him about I'll never forget. I told him about this recording. For some reason, I didn't know who the guitar player on it was. And he was like, "You know what? That was me." So it was like this it was it was like a solo, but like a right, I'm messing that up. What is it? Something like that, something to that effect. And once let me see if I can do it justice. Something like that. So once I was able to get that under my fingers, I'm like, okay, I think I'm gonna really start taking this thing serious. And that's when
How old were you?
I was maybe 12. Yeah, 11 or 12 or so. I'm like, okay, yeah, this is, because, to be honest with you, I started out as a fan. Like, I mean, music was always around me, but some of my earliest memories are of me sitting and watching. I would sit and watch my father, his group, but I would just always, and the guitar always like drew me in. And, I started out on drums and I played piano and stuff as well. But like the guitar was like, it's so dynamic, I'm like, yeah, and it's portable. So, but, yeah, so, once I really, once I got my hands on my guitar and I was able to like, get my ear to a point where I could like kind of pick stuff out, I'm like, yeah, I think I'm gonna go full ahead with this thing. So yeah, man, that was kind of like,
I could see that. I could see that one setting the hook.
yeah,
That's a solo, tells a story, makes the changes, complete thought. It's like,
yeah,
oh, if I can nail that, I could see, oh, this is possible. I could do this. Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that answers number two, which is what's the first solo you ever learned note for note?
Yeah, well, there it is. There it is.
Because I'm always curious. What's the first thing someone took the time to sit down and had to learn every note of somebody else's solo or something?
Well, thankfully that one was short, and it, at that time I definitely had a short attention span, so I think I lucked out with that one, man.
Was there another one that you remember spending a bunch of time on as a kid?
Um, no, not particularly. I remember learning songs, not so much solos, but learning songs. So once again, his album collection was vast. It wasn't just gospel stuff; it was everything. So you had a lot of the crooners in there, the Nat Coles, but you want Willie Nelson, So it was kind of it was pretty diverse. So I just remember just listening a lot of the Curtis Mayfield stuff and.
Ooh, yeah.
Just it was a lot of good information in there that I just would sit with for. I remember discovering the Isley Brothers, and it was funny because I'm very much a MTV generation, whatnot. So I remember hearing Footsteps in the Dark, but didn't know it was Footsteps in the Dark because I knew it from like the Ice Cube. Today was a good day. So
Yeah.
I remember I'm like, oh yeah, and my dad's like, oh yeah, that's the Isley Brothers. These guys are, they go back. This isn't even like the beginning of who they are. So come to find out they've been around forever. And then fast forward, I actually played with them for about 10 years, so I remember like it just coming full circle. I'm like, oh wow. And I had a surreal moment on stage one time. I'm like, I remember when I discovered these guys, so it was one of those things, man, but yeah, I just definitely was all about songs and just learning as much as I possibly could and in as many genres as I possibly could, so yeah.
Awesome, man. All right. Next question. Well, so that was one and two. So number three. This one is just interesting to me. What's the first thing you play every time you pick up a guitar? Do you have something that your fingers just go there automatically? Because I know I do.
Um, well, that's interesting. Well, when I'm trying out guitars, or no, it can be my guitars because I have a few guitars, and if I haven't played one in a while, I just want to make sure the intonation and the strings are fresh and all. So I always go to a like something in G. So I always do like a and just kind of let it ring and see if am okay. Is it there? Is it? And I can tell if the strings need to be changed or if there's
Yep,
buzzing
yep.
going on. You know what I mean? So yeah, that's kind of.
Yeah.
But it's generally something in G. You know.
All right, that's good to know because mine's in G, but mine has changed over the years. It used to be in
Okay.
E for about 10 years, and then for the last 10 years, it's been in G. Every
Okay.
time I pick up a guitar and check out any guitar, I really go something like that or whatever, and I'll play some variation of that every
Right. Right.
time I pick up any new guitar just to see what it feels like or whatever. Interesting. All right.
You know what's funny? I thought I was kind of weird for being doing that. I'm like, am I on autopilot? But that's comforting to know that. Yeah.
Everybody's got something they do every time. It's
I guess
really interesting. Okay,
so.
so that kind of answers this next question, but maybe we can go a little deeper.
Mhm.
What key, style, song do you hear in your head all day long? Because when I'm laying in bed, when I'm
Mhm.
driving the car, when I'm scrambling eggs,
Mhm.
I'm hearing B flat, ba-doo-da-doo-da-da, ba-ba-da-doo-da-da-da-da. Like I just hear that 24 hours a day. I can't help it. What do you
Wow.
hear 24 hours a day?
Oh man, I once again, man, when I explain stuff out loud, it really comes out sounding silly to me. I'm like, really, Eric? So no, it's like a figure. It's a and it's based upon a song called "Old Rugged Cross," but it's a figure and it incorporates the whammy bar, and it's basically it's that type of thing. It's that type of thing, and it's all I hear that like all the time. Like it just plays on repeat. I'm on,
Yep.
I love that song, but like it's just something about it. Like when played with the whammy bar, though.
Wow.
So yeah,
Wow. Beautiful, man. Beautiful. Yeah, and so everybody's got a different kind of running loop in their head, and it
absolutely.
never ends. It never ends.
Yeah.
There's nights I can't fall asleep because I'm just improvising in my head and I feel like I'm on a roll. You know what I mean?
I get it, man. I totally get it. Absolutely.
Oh, dude. All right. When did you first feel like you started to find your sound, as we were talking about earlier? What was like the light bulb or the moment when something clicked and you felt like I should go further down this path? This is where I'm meant to go.
You know what? That's interesting. I really think it was after I had some opportunities, really, because I thought I knew what I was doing at one point, but then I started digging deeper, and coming to LA was a real eye-opening experience for me because this is a melting pot of musicians. It's a ton of great guitar players. So I'm like, okay, well, you know, Paul Jackson does this thing. Met Alan Hines earlier. Alan Hines does this type of thing. It's a ton of guys. So I'm like, everybody has this thing that they do. What is my thing? So I really had to I'm like, okay, I play with a thumb pick. Okay. I grew up playing gospel, so I can kind of approach it that way. Would it be a rhythmic thing? Would it be? So it took some real figuring out for me to kind of figure out like what my thing was going to be or what my thing is, not what it's going to be. But, I kind of, once I really started playing or got more experience, it really started developing that way, if that makes any sense. And it wasn't until maybe, it took me a good 5 years of being out here to really like, okay, that's it. That's what I'm gonna, that's what I'm doing, or that's what I have to offer. So
And then you embraced it, right? And you went further
absolutely.
that way.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And you get some pats on the back, like, yeah, what's that thing? Yeah, do that thing, do that
And
thing.
didn't you find that the gigs you started to get called for were more enjoyable because they were calling you for you, not just to
Absolutely.
be guitar player number one and do the
I'm
job.
not a
They were
very
calling you for you.
absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, indeed.
Yeah,
Yes. Yeah, man.
100%. All
Man.
right. What's your biggest weakness on the guitar? I'll tell you mine. It's playing acoustic guitar on sessions. I hate doing it, and it's my biggest weakness, 100%.
Well, I mean, acoustic guitar is another instrument. It's a totally different world, whole nother set of chops. Are needed for sure. My weakness, my technique is terrible. Like I said, when I really think, when I really break down certain figures, I'm like, yeah, I could probably do that in a much more sensible way. But what happens is I try to play from I try to make everyththing comfortable. So, I try to stay away from certain shapes, certain like bar shapes and stuff that, my hands are quite sensitive. I like to think so. So I would say it's limiting it, where there have been instances where, due to my technique or me not really focusing on proper technique, there have been some challenges in certain figures that I've had to play. So I don't know, it's something I'm conscious of, but it's something I'm working at as well. So
All right. That's interesting. Yeah, everybody knows the things that they stay away from the things that, oh, that's not my lane. You know what I mean?
well,
I know some of those areas.
these last 6 months, this has been an amazing opportunity for me to really, like, I've been really adamant about, like, getting better. Like, so I mean, I'm thankful to have had this time to kind of sit and be still
So
to
you've been
where
shedding every day?
shedding, man. And it's been great because I've been able to apply. I've been doing sessions every day, so I've been able to apply it, and I'm like, I see that. Okay, there's a difference. So yeah, man.
Man, it's amazing when you put in the work what happens, that's an obsession of mine, to be better tomorrow than I am today.
Man, well,
Always, no matter what. I need to hear it's an arbitrary number, but I need to hear a recording of myself from 3 months ago and hear
mhm.
new shit when I listen now. You know what I mean?
I do know
And it
what you.
drives me crazy if I don't.
Yeah. Well, my fear is just to not go backwards. I'm like, man, like, man, I wish I could do that. I still could do that.
That
Yeah.
too, you want to keep everything you got for
Yeah.
sure. But dude, how old are you, Eric?
I'm 40.
Okay, we're exactly the same age. I'm 40. So, do you? This wasn't on my list, but it's a question I meant to ask you earlier. Do you worry about keeping your stuff sharp as you get older? Because we've all been around long enough now and played since we were younger that we know people that were exactly the age we are right now that we saw as kids who were crushing it and maybe aren't so good anymore. They kind of lost it. Do you worry about that stuff?
No, well, I think we're in a unique position, Josh. Like, there's a difference between being a musician and being in the music business. I think being in the music business, to be actively in the music business, and I say actively, meaning like you're moving, like your career is moving and you're doing new things and you're not stagnant. It requires you to stay abreast as to what's going on. And that lends itself to your musical vocabulary, your gear, everything. Like, in order to stay fresh, you have to, or if you want to have those opportunities coming in, if it's not your stuff, like, I mean, of course, like your artistic stuff is one thing, but if you're being a team player and working with others, like, staying on top of the stuff is a must in order for you to maintain that flow of work. So
Yep.
I definitely, I don't, I'm mindful of it because I've seen guys, like you said, I've
Sure.
definitely seen guys, that have been on top of the world and totally fall off simply because they've dated themselves. So
Right.
I think God has allowed me to see that as a reminder. It's like, yeah, don't be that. Like, that could
Yep.
be you. So
Yep.
conscious of what you're doing and mindful of what you're doing, so that won't be you, you know.
Yeah, I remember seeing Les Paul before he passed, and it was like, I want to be that. I want to be 90 something and playing good. Yeah,
That is
that's important.
that's how you do it, right?
Yeah. All right,
Yeah.
number 7.
Mhm.
What's a huge influence of yours that people would be surprised to hear?
Man, well, once again, growing up in like the MTV era, man, I just remember, I remember when we got MTV, and I always reference MTV, and I remember one of the first videos I saw was Cherry Pie. Um, so I love a lot of those hair bands, man. And then I'm very much a fan of like a lot of the grunge, the early grunge stuff, and Soundgardens and Metallicas and all that stuff.
Okay.
So I mean, like my thing is, if it sounds good, I'm into it, man. And I've learned from so many different genres of music, whether it been super aggressive or folk music. So everything in between there, I've gotten something from. So I'm a huge like Van Halen fan. Like when I take road trips or whatever, if I'm driving by myself, I'll play the 1984 album, a couple of times. So that,
I listen
so
to Van Halen all the time, and my son loves Van Halen. And there's not a
well,
lot of music my son gets excited about, but he likes Van Halen, so we'll listen.
well, that's a great thing to be able to bond over, man.
All right, so then who was Eddie your guy of the Shredder guys, like from the 80s, or was there somebody else that you were really into?
Definitely, definitely Eddie. I mean, Eddie had everything. Not only did he have the chops, but he was having fun. Like he wasn't a
And he
corn.
swung, man. He swings.
Yeah, it was crazy, man. So I
His
mean,
rhythm guitar playing is so underrated. That dude swings hard. Go listen if you haven't. Everybody, go on YouTube. Listen to the isolated guitar of "Beautiful Girls," and he plays bum 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 da 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 bum bum bum. It's swinging so hard, guys. You need to listen to that. Anyways,
special,
all right.
special.
Here's a random question: would you rather have a great guitar and a crappy amp, or a crappy guitar and a great amp?
Wow. I say a great guitar and a crappy amp.
Okay, so you're the opposite of me on this one. So tell me why.
Well, here's my logic. With a great guitar and a crappy amp, if somebody called you to come play and you couldn't take the amp with you, you still have the great guitar. And if they had a great amp, you'd be winning.
In a vacuum, though, if you're forced to use it on a scenario, which
Well,
one?
I mean, you know what? I still have to go with great guitar, but I've had guitars. Thankfully, I've had both, but I've definitely had guitars that were that I had to fight to play, and I know you know what I mean by that. And the even like really they could be expensive guitars, really nice guitars, but for some reason I had to fight to play them, and that for me is a turnoff. It really kills my mood. You know what I mean? And in terms of if it's not set up right or whatever, it tears my hands up. I'm not gonna play very long, or I'm not gonna be very inspired. Like, yeah, it has to sound great, but if it doesn't feel great, I'm like, I'm no good, man. So yeah.
You said the magic words right there. It's what makes you inspired. So for me,
Hmm.
the tone is a little more important. If the guitar is crappy but the tone is okay, I'll play better than if the tone is just
Yeah.
horrendous and the plays like butter. If the tone's just awful, I won't get into the moment at all. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah,
And
I get it.
that's an interesting thing. An argument for like I get into arguments with blues purists, from my world, which I'm sure you do in your world too, about you can't have pedals and you can't plug straight into the amp. You don't need all that junk. And my argument is this: if whatever gear I bring makes me more comfortable,
Hmm.
doesn't that mean I play better and that the end experience for the audience is a better experience? Shouldn't that be the goal no matter what? Not just to make you happy or whatever. And they never have an answer back to that one.
The age old debate, huh?
Exactly. Exactly.
Oh
All
man.
right. Cool. Cool. All right. What keeps you motivated, man? And like you said, what keeps you? You've been shedding the whole pandemic. What keeps you going and so excited about this thing that we love?
Well, just knowing that there's always another level to obtain, like, knowing that there's always going to be a new flavor or a new approach to something. As music evolves, there's always going to be some new things. So I definitely I it excites me to be able to, I'm a fan of a lot of different players, a lot of different styles. So right now during the pandemic, I've been heavy into, and I've had quite a few opportunities to do it, but playing like a lot of ambient guitar, a lot of like, lush kind of, so a lot of that kind of thing, that wasn't something I was necessarily doing a lot of. So being able to really dive into that, and then, that comes with a whole nother set of tools. I won't necessarily use a Strat, I'm using Gretches and using, I've gotten some
Better at timing your delays and all that stuff, man.
there it is. So it requires you to, really just do more studying, learning more, So yeah, man, that keeps me driven though, knowing that there's always going to be something else to kind of,
It's
to
never
really,
ending. It's a
it's never ending.
never-ending pool. You
Yeah.
can't get to the end of it, and that's what makes it so great. I tell younger guys all the time, man, if there's something you're hearing or that you want to learn, you're the only one holding yourself back from it. It's like it's right there for you. So if you haven't spent the time to learn it, it's obvious it wasn't that important to you.
That's true. This is absolutely true. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Oh man. All right. And number 10, where do you want to be in 5 years as a guitar player? Is there something you really want to know or learn, or a goal you're pushing towards that you're hoping you'll be at?
Um, well, hopefully in 5 years, my technique will have improved. No, but seriously, man, you know what? I just want to be able to maintain what I have moving forward, and just really sharpen, and that's, once again, you spoke on just being, knowing your weaknesses and knowing like what you need to do in order to improve. So like I'm actively working on being the best I can possibly be, and a lot of that comes with just studying, sitting down, and really just putting the time in. So yeah, man, I just want to, I want to just continue on the same path, and just be the best I possibly can be.
I love it, man. No resting on laurels around here. Not at all.
No, out of all, Puffy said something a while ago that really resonated with me. He said, I tend not to live my life in the trophy room, because when I spend too much time in that, or too much time there, I'm missing the party. Like, so, and that really resonated with me. I'm like, yeah, yeah, it's great. Yeah, you've done this, you've done that, whatever. That's great. But moving forward, man, like, and not to, once again, I'm always listening to just different perspectives. I listened to a segment on NPR a while back, and they interviewed a group of people. They were all 100 years or older, and from different areas of the globe, different corners of the globe, whatnot. The one thing that they all had in common was their ability to adapt to change and really move forward in mindset. And they attributed that one thing to like their or that state of mind. They attributed their longevity to that state of mind, and that hit me like a ton of bricks. I'm like, wow, so not being stuck is the key to longevity. So it just it was like, okay. So no, I've embraced that, and just really, that resonates with me, but I really just, kind of take that in terms of everything I'm doing musically. So yeah, man.
Dude, you can't make it any simpler than that. Idle hands, right? I mean, just keep
I
yourself
don't
busy. Yeah,
Keep yourself busy, man. That's it,
yeah.
right?
And you'll live to 100. You heard it here.
So the Les Paul approach, right?
Exactly. All right, man. Eric, thank you so much. We'll have some links under the description to all things Erick Walls, anything you want to share so people can find you. And we're going to end the video here, but there'll be a couple more minutes for the members. where we're going to talk about something. So if you're not a member, become one now, or else you won't hear the end of this video. But thank you, Erick, man. It's a joy and a pleasure to have you on here, man.
Pleasure's been all mine. Thank you, Josh.